Gaza, a coastal strip of land that lies on ancient trading and maritime routes along the Mediterranean shore. Merchants of old would buy and sell in its ancient bazaars, linking Egypt to the rest of the Middle East. Today, it is a shadow of its former self. Plumes of smoke signal the reality of the conflict with Israel and the destruction of infrastructure and buildings. But economic barriers are not new to Gaza. The territory has been under Israeli blockade since 2005. The movement of people and goods in and out of the enclave are heavily controlled. Gazans' access to natural resources is limited, and only certain types of economic activity and trade are permitted. This has stalled economic development in the enclave and means many Palestinians must find work in Israel with the permission of the Israeli state.
The permit is everything for me. It is like my leg and hand. It is my life. If I lose the permit, my life will stop. When the permit was not active, there was no life, there was no work.
And any sort of closure of the borders means more economic hardship for Palestinians.
I have been deeply affected by the closures. I am struggling to repay my debts or get food for my children. We have many responsibilities. I have 3 children who have completed their secondary education. I at least hope I can support them to continue their college education.
Unemployment levels in Gaza are among the highest in the world, at more than 45% in 2022. And almost 62% of all Palestinians in Gaza require food assistance, with 95% of water unfit for consumption. Israel has now announced a total siege of the territory, cutting off supplies of food, fuel, and water. The enclave's only power plant has been forced to switch off after running out of fuel. It will be some time before a monetary value can be calculated, but the estimated cost of the last Israeli military attack in 2021 amounted to over $380 million. And Israel is paying the price too. The Israeli shekel has fallen by 2.8% since the start of the conflict, weakening by 10% so far this year. This has pushed the central bank to sell its foreign reserves for the first time.
If you look at some of the reports, it seems like anywhere from 30 to 45 billion has been used up by the central bank's policy tools to try and stem that volatility.
And analysts also say the economic outlook for the country will continue to be on a downward trend.
The economic outlook, I think it's very much dependent again on how long this war goes on for and how severe it actually gets, right? Because net, I think for the population and even the region at large, as long as this war persists, it could be, or it should be a downward drag on the economy. Having said that, we note that the sovereign debt is about to be downgraded, and markets are already reacting to as such.
At a time when Israel has just begun normalizing trade ties with regional powers like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, analysts fear this conflict could send them back to the diplomatic drawing board. Emre Boz, TRT World.
For more on this now, we are joined by Leila Hatoum in Beirut. She's a Middle East analyst. Thank you very much for joining us today. Right, let's start from the situation in the Gaza Strip before this conflict started. I mean, can you tell us more about the economic and the social situation there in Gaza? And I'm talking about the unemployment that we were hearing in our colleague's report, the GDP per capita as well. How was the situation before Saturday?
The situation has always been dire in Gaza, simply because it has been under siege for the past 15 to 16 years. This stifled the economic growth in Gaza. It's just because you can't get any construction materials, you can't get anything inside before the Israelis approve it. At the same time, the Gazans can't leave. So whatever manufacturing they have, it's minimal, and whatever basically businesses they have, it's minimal. We recently saw a WLO, the World Labour Organization's report that was issued last month. It said about 2/3 of Gazans are unemployed. And the fact that Gaza's GDP is negligent, it goes anywhere around $600 to $800 million per year. And that's throughout the past 10 years. That tells you something. It's nothing compared to Israel's GDP, which is about 488 billion. But then again, look at GDP per capita in Gaza. It has always been the smallest in the world, kind of smallest in the world, they get about $45 per day, and that's on a good term. So it's about one quarter of what the whole of Palestine's GDP per capita is.
Right, it's incredible. 2/3, 75% of the population now was actually unemployed until last week. And right, what about now? What are the most urgent needs of the civilian population there in Gaza? And through which channel are they going to essentially get the help they need? And what sort of timeline are we looking at?
So we're looking at three main issues that are dire and the Gazans are in need of. One, it's water, electricity, fuel basically for electricity, and food. They cannot sustain without food, they cannot sustain without water, but at the same time, they need fuel to continue to run their hospitals. There are people who are undergoing dialysis, operations, children that are in comas, they can't live without that. So basically, with no electricity, the generator is running out of fuel, then you're going to have hospitals that are basically graves.